Okay, so I'm basically set to go. Uh, Let me see if I can remember where I left off. It'll have a to-do on it. Uh, yeah, I don't. In terms of the Apple like walled garden and all the issues, there's three big reasons why I'm not a fan of Apple, and the walled garden thing is one of them. The not working well is one of them, and then I'm also, I'm not a fan of the business practices of the company that produces the iDevices. So it's pretty hard to justify giving them any money from my point of view. But if I had to get a game like Prune, I would buy it, but I don't want to buy the device to begin with. So it's a bit tricky. I don't really mind buying it on a walled garden if it's a good game, but I do mind buying the device in the first place. Okay. So the first thing I actually want to do is I decided it'd be better if I did this first. So that is on the parser. I don't want, well actually technically it's the lexer. It's funny because this thing that says lex is doing parsing and this thing that says parse is doing lexing. So I've got it all out of sync. But if I go to where it says if in certain places, okay, first of all this can go. And then here, CPP, if. Yeah, buying used would make it a little better. I haven't even upgraded a phone for a while, but if I had to, I think I would get a used iPhone. Even though I'm not totally happy about that. If I had to get a new phone, that is. So what I want to do is say whenever I'm reading the body of an if, I want to where was that? I want to mark defines as operators. The defined keywords. So I'm going to have a separate system like this, and then anywhere where I'm doing, hopefully there's not too much of this. Okay, so that's where I'm setting it. This is after reading a macro, not a problem. Okay, good. I was worried there would be these all over the place. Yeah, things like patents and I don't know. I don't know if this is still true, but they, along with everyone else, liked to use pretty questionably terrible methods for producing their devices. I don't know if that's still a problem these days, but it was at one point, and that scared me away for a while. I tried not to ever buy phones or computers or anything. Like, I don't want to buy money. I think when you buy things, you're voting with your money in a way. Every dollar you spend is a vote for which companies should run the world, and I definitely don't want Apple running the world. So. Okay, now what I'm going to do is look at read pp default mode. There's alphanumeric. So what I'm thinking I'll do is I'll add like a if body 0. And then what'll happen is if you are at this point and you are in an if body, you'll do an extra step, which is you'll say, oh, what does that do? Read alphanumeric. Okay, so this is reading the entire word, and then it's seeing if it matches with anything. So this is actually where I think I want to use in if body. So if that ever gets set to true, it will check for the defined word, which normally won't do. Well, let me back that up one step. I want this to happen no matter what if this part doesn't work. So it's more like, I'm not sure. If result start. Yeah, so I have that sort of done in a different way than what I've been doing recently. D7 Samurai, yeah, I believe so. I don't think Twitch broadcasts last past disappearing there. Yeah, we're still talking about the Apple thing and talking about the Samsung phones that look like Apple things. I think that should have been considered a trademark thing somehow. I mean, because it's just wrong to use patents to prevent that problem was the issue. But, it's a problem that should be prevented too. So, but you can't. If you use patents for the wrong reason, it starts to get scary to me. Okay, anyway, result.token.type equals token operator. I guess I need to define this. Defined. Hi D7. Today, still doing the same expression parsing. I literally did nothing between this stream and the previous stream, except think. So the first thing I'm doing is this right here. What I was doing, I said I have to do this at have Lex or identify this first. So basically, in the bodies of ifs and elifs, I want to label defined not as an identifier, but as a different type of token. And so I'm getting that done first because that'll make my job easier when I go to do that. And then I'm going to get on to actually doing all this parsing stuff that I started, actually evaluating that conditional expression. So, yep, that's the plan. Token defined. There we go. Is there anything else that this does? That looks good. Okay, now what I'll do is say don't do all this work if the token is no longer, and what was it? I have to go check one more thing. Token type jump is the 0. Or rather, it does equal junk, meaning it hasn't been set yet. Alright. Okay, so that should just work. Let me make sure, since I'm editing the parser, that could have changed. String, 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 U8. Oh, silliness. Okay. And then, let's see. I don't think this should be building right now. So, the parser part. So that, I'm just gonna hope that it's working, and we'll see if it's working when I do this. So back to the parser. Alright, so instead of this, this can go. And that means I can simplify this down. D7 Samurai, yeah, I remember that. I remember that rant too. That's one of the things that got me started on this. So that's interesting. That's the one you're looking for. I remember it. Okay. Alright, so that resolves that. Now if we see an identifier, we can just grab a 0. And otherwise, alright, here's where I left off, converting the string into an int. Let me see real quick if my string handles converting to an int anywhere already. int to string doesn't look like I have string to int. Okay. So then what I want is something like value equals string to int, string int. You know, I had this interesting realization recently because I'm seeing D7 Samurai and Garlando Bloom are talking about how programmers, you know, try to ask the computer or tell the computer to do what we want, and uh, that's one of the reasons I like C-style programming is because with the C-style programming, it just feels like I'm telling the computer what I want it to do, whereas a lot of other things, even in just C++, it felt like I was trying to trick the computer into doing what I wanted to do. That it was against me, and I was trying to pull a trick over it, you know, with all fancy sort of encapsulations and inheritances that would trick the computer into doing what I thought it should be doing. Whereas with this, I just tell it exactly what I want it to be doing. All right. Okay. Int. I could even be more specific and say string pi32. It takes a string. Okay, so that's the intention of that is to read the string and get the integer form of it. Let me make sure it makes sense. Yeah, that looks right. Okay. And then I lost it. Where is it? Oh, right here. So that got the value. That got that. I used to be on Stack Overflow. Someone brought up Stack Overflow on the chat. So I used to be on Stack Overflow, and I had asked a couple questions and answered a couple questions, and I wasn't there all the time, but I went there. I had an account, and then one time I asked a question about why is this, what kinds of things are causing my seg fault, and I explained it wasn't that I had overrun the buffer. I was like, I was extremely clear. I had done a ton of things to prove it. I didn't overrun the buffer, and they were all like, "No, it sounds like a memory. Sounds like you've definitely done a memory overrun." Everyone insisted it, and a bunch of other people insisted I should have been using vector rather than allocating my own memory. And I just and then I ended up figuring out that it was because I was on a weird system where I had to make sure my ints were aligned, and that's why it was faulting. And that's when I realized that none of those people would have ever figured that out. So there was no point in me asking them for help anymore, and I rage quit because I was frustrated with everyone telling me to use vector. I was very frustrated because I come with a problem where I'm way past using vector. I'm trying to do something extremely specific, and we should be using vector as if I just haven't considered that option. It's kind of annoying. Like I wasn't solving something more difficult than already, because your programs, you don't program in a vacuum. There's a whole bunch of things going on. Alright, so came to the conclusion that I don't want this. That was the expression node, but I'm not actually building an abstract syntax tree here. I'm just building an expression evaluator. Yeah, it seems like people on Stack Overflow are more interested in telling you that they're not interested in answering your question. They certainly don't focus on the question. They'd rather explain to you how they would have approached the problem from the beginning. But after that incident, I totally rage quit. I started getting rude with the people who were answering my questions inappropriately, and then a moderator told me not to get angry, and I was like, you know what? I've solved it by myself, so that's it. I was done. And I quit. I shut my account down. Yeah, exactly. D7 Samurai, that's exactly my experience. People on Stack Overflow don't care at all about the fact that you're probably programming something massive, that you have all sorts of constraints, and that you've asked a very specific question. They just want to tell you what they would have done for the specific part of the thing you brought up. They say, well, why would you possibly be, managing your own memory? And in this case, I was managing my own memory for a lot of reasons, but mostly because I was using it for more than one thing. I didn't just have an array. I had a couple of arrays back to back, and I was trying to pack them all together, and so I thought it was way easier to do that way than to use a vector. So it was like, thanks, great, I'll use a vector for something that I just that doesn't make any sense for. Hey Mojo Bojo, welcome. I'm doing pretty well. Okay, so what I've just done is I said we're not going to have those nodes, we just have the stack of, so I don't need that. Okay. So all of this code here, starting from here and going down to here, is doing the work of looking at a token and deciding whether or not it's an operator or a leaf, and figuring out the value of that operator or leaf. Now we have that. We can actually do a bit of parsing. So if the thing we got, well, if the parse type is expression, this is a switch. Well, okay, so it's more like assert parse type is not equal. And there's no reason it actually should be an assert, because if someday I just want to handle that correctly, but not right now. So I switched asserts to tentative asserts. It just tells me I don't intend this assert to be here forever. It's just a temporary thing that should be improved. It's the exact same thing other than that. Yeah, I don't want to psychoanalyze too much, but I always got the impression on Stack Overflow that there was a bunch of people who were trying to prove that they were smart, and they weren't really interested in being helpful. So they would always assume that you did something wrong before you asked your question and dig into it. No, not token type, I want parse type equals expression operator, else. That's how I could do it. So it is kind of a switch, but oh well. I'm not rewriting it now. Okay, so if I see an operator, then what I want to do is I want to take the operator and I'm going to ignore defined. What I really need right now is I need a mapping of operator types to their number of operands and a function for determining their various levels of stickiness, which means how tightly they bind to operands together. So, yep, guess I have to do a little bit more bookkeeping. Okay. Count. So what I want is type. I think that if all I'm gonna have is I'll keep holding that struct because I'm not sure. It seems to me like there might be another thing I want. Yeah. Okay. Precedence. Is everything on this list left associative? I'm not sure, but I think so. What sorts of things are right associative? Equal signs. Pre-increment. Yeah, I think it's fine. Canoe goals. You're not too late. You're fine. And yes, Garlando, Bloom, there are some long falls in Spelunky when you get to the jungle, but, you know, I mean, compared to the ice caves, there's not. I mean, that game just, the long falls get crazier. The only time that the long falls really suck in the jungle, I guess they can suck because you don't actually expect them there, and sometimes they surprise you. Whereas in the ice caves, you're totally ready for long falls. So maybe that's the key difference that you're getting at there. Okay, so what I want to do is just go through all of these and give them a precedence level. And higher precedence will be, normally you put lower numbers into stickier things, if I remember correctly. At least normally I do. Spelunky is one of my favorite games. I can get to the ice caves about half the time I play. And I've gotten past the ice caves, but I haven't beaten the game. I haven't even beaten Olmec or faced him. I've done the whole Ankh thing a couple of times, but not many. I think I've gotten the Ankh about 3 or 4 times, and I've actually completed it once. Like, you know, going into the door thing anyway. I never did check the operator precedence on this. Oh, and I have to do hi, real fiddly. Yeah, I'm working on a 4coder is a code editing application, and I'm currently working on a C++ front end for parsing C++, specifically the preprocessor. At least that's the portion I'm working on right now. And or, alright. And you can get more information at 4coder.net. Oh yeah, the bees are pretty brutal. Actually, I can't really understand what they're doing there because they seem unbeatable. Although I think I have got the queen bee once with a sticky bomb, but it's bad news. Alright, so that is probably not right, but that's what I'm going with. We can at least test with this. And with that in mind, I also need to know the operand count of each operator. This is a little simpler. Okay, now the bookkeeping is done and we can actually parse. We can parse stuff. So if we have an operator, then I want to take that operator and push it onto the operator stack. So that's something I need, is I need a count of how many of these I have. Count. Count. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and get an op max in there right now and a leaf max. Okay. And that should go with this one. Perfect. Okay, so then op count equals value. Okay. Okay, so that pushes operators onto the stack. Why do I have operator twice? That should be leaf. Right? Okay. So now when you get a leaf, what you want to do is push it onto the stack and see if you, yeah, okay, so I need to take the leaf count, push that onto the stack. I also need to do an assert op count is less than op max, and leaf count is less than leaf max. Leaves equals value. And I think this needs to be cast to a expression op type. Or no, what I need to do is I need to go right here and say type equals. Right? Yes. Okay. And then the trick is whenever you're pushing an operator, the idea is it's a little bit hard to remember even me. Okay, so if you have something like this, when you push the 3 first, and you push a plus, and then you push a 2, but you can't add those right away because something might be more sticky on the 2 than the plus. So after pushing the 2, you push a times, and then you push a 3, and you still can't resolve it because you don't know if there'll be something more sticky than a times. But then when you stick a plus, then when you push the plus, you go, hey, this is stickier, so I gotta do it first, and then this one is stickier because it's to the left and it's left associative, so you could do that one. You finally get to combine all these numbers into 9, and then you do push a plus, push a 4, and then when you get to the end, you resolve any operators you haven't resolved yet. So what we want to do is we want to say we'll get my precedence while the ops pp precedence of value is more or equal to the stickiness of. All right. This should come before I put it on the stack, actually. Okay. Alright, so if the precedence is larger on this, so it's less sticky, and whatever's at the top of the stack, which is op count dot type, that's got to be -1. And so we also need to make sure op count is greater than 0, because if there's nothing left, then you don't keep doing the loop. So while there's still something on the operator stack, and while its precedent is less than or equal to, so it's higher or same level of precedence, then you want to resolve that operator first. So to resolve an operator, what you do is you take, well, let's start by saying, here's the operator I want to resolve. what did I call this? Expression op type. Type equals this. Okay, so that's a little bit of redundancy. And then what I want to do is I want to say we need to know the operand count. Yep, operand count, which will be pp operands of the type. And then what you do is you take that many off of the other stack, and I want to assert that there actually are that many on the stack of leaves. When I say leaves, it's because like when you form the abstract syntax tree, the numbers and like the literal values and variables form the leaves. In this case, there are no variables, there's only numbers. But the leaves are the things that aren't operators that combine things up higher up the tree. So operand count needs to be less than or equal to the leaf counts that I have enough to pull off. And then I'll need up to 3 operands, so I'll do that. And what I'll do is I'll say operand 0 equals leaf count. However many operands I want, grab them. And then what I need to do is switch on my operator type. Hi, Glorious G. Yeah, what I'm actually making is a C++ front end. Right now I'm writing the pre-processing portion of that. But the main point isn't to make a compiler or language interpreter. I'm making an editor that is going to have a semantic understanding of the language of C++. Okay. And that's why it needs a parser. So, and thank you to Kilimion for fielding that question before I saw it. I might have to establish a moderator just so that can be taken care of here. Hey, Abner. Thanks for coming. Yeah, I was sick of seeing Mr. Fourth Dimension in notifications when I was talking to people. I wish my name was there, so snuck it in. Abner Coimbray was commenting that I changed my Twitter handle. Okay, so I need to look at the types, so let me side by side edit this real quick. There we go. Scroll up here to my operator types. Okay, so if I see op not defined is going to have to work differently, so special behavior for defined. Defined is going to be a real pain to actually finish. Not a huge pain, but when expanding, I now have to go through and check for defined tokens and say, if you see a defined operator, do not expand what you see inside there. Leave it as is. right? So I have to go and add an exception to the expansion rules, and then I can make that one work properly, and it won't use any of the normal stuff either. It'll all be funky. But oh well, gotta do what you gotta do. Kalimian, you want to use some kind of joystick for navigating the editor? Because, I mean, I have no objection to that. I worry about, I don't, you're not one of the people who got the KC style wrist guards, but I worry about, like, are those designed for, controller-based coding? I don't know. All right. So, if you have a not, then okay. And the point of this step is there's a sort of result value, which I'll initialize to 0 to begin with. Actually, I'll initialize it to something that I'll be able to recognize easily, like for debugging. Okay, so the idea is what I want to look at is something like this for all of these. So operand 0, right? So I just store the result there, and then when I'm done, I can push that onto the leaf stack. So whatever result I get from resolving the operator gets pushed onto the stack of leaves again. So, for example, after resolving a not operator, whatever the result was from that is now on the stack of leaves and can be a part of another expression. Okay, so that's op not. How about op mul? In this case, it's operands 0 times operands. This is actually far simpler than a real parser, since I don't have to build the abstract syntax tree, but just actually resolve the actual values. I've never gotten to do, well, I haven't done one this simple in a long time. The first one I ever made did this. Okay, divide. It's actually a lot of fun. PP up for me. Mod add sub L shift. R shift. Real fiddly, what I'm working on to exactly is the, I'll show you the test case. Parser test 2. I'm working on the preprocessor. I'm working on being able to evaluate conditionals on these ifs. So it is preprocessor stuff. If I was doing if I was working on the actual language part, I wouldn't actually be resolving to values here. Like when I read, in the full parser, when I read the addition operator, I don't add two numbers together. I instead take two leaf nodes and make a new node that treats those as children, so that I'm building the abstract syntax tree rather than actually evaluating like inline. This is a much simpler problem just because I get to, instead of having to build an abstract syntax tree out of it. but it's still a preprocessor. RShift, PP up, bit and. Greater, less, greater, equal, less equal, not equal. Oops. That should just be straight up greater than, less than, greater than or equal, less than or equal, and not equal. Alright, so that's all I need for pulling off operands and putting them back on with new values, and putting on results back on the leaf stack. And that'll do everything except for parentheses. It will choke on parentheses. It'll choke on defined, the ternary operator, and it won't resolve the last parentheses yet, or like the last operator. So if you have a 3 plus 3 plus 3, it'll have a 6 and a 3 on the leaf stack and a plus on the operator stack. So I have to make sure to resolve everything when we're done. Since everything I have has parentheses, like in the tests, there's parentheses all over the place, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I get those in too. So for that, what I need a couple of other operators. They're not actually operators, they're kind of pretend to be operators though. Because it's easier to run them through the operator path in my experience. Cursor. Okay, what is the name of an open parent token? Oh, come on. Parenthesis open, parenthesis close. All right, so that's 1 hour. Getting pretty far this time. But as I said on Twitter, I will keep going, except for maybe breaks, until it's roughly done. I might skip to find. Okay. And let's see if I have those. Then the trick is I have to give them precedence. And for precedence, you want to give parentheses -1, or at least I do. And the reason for that is, so stickier things force, wait, it's the other way around, less sticky things. So let me see this through. So 2 times 3 plus 4. Before this gets added, this gets resolved first. If I were to say 2 times 2 plus 3 times 4, this times would not trigger this plus to resolve right away. Whereas flipping that does cause it. And when the parentheses matter is on times like this, because on this case that matters because the closed parenthesis tells the 3 to resolve. It tells everything between here and the open parenthesis to resolve right away. Whereas if I were to flip these, how does it matter? It matters because it says don't resolve this yet, even though the plus would have a higher precedent. Okay, so that's the trick. Got it. So yeah, you want -1 there because then it won't cause anything to resolve. And the number of operands is also -1 because it's not a thing that makes sense. Parentheses. See, it's a little bit of a hack to treat them as operators, but I don't know. It works out better for me. I should really find a way to get rid of that. I mean, I wish I could do the same sort of array thing I'm doing up here, but there's a lot more token types. Which isn't necessarily even a problem, but I don't know. Which reminds me, this up here, okay, so it's right here when it comes time to check and see if we need to resolve operators that the open parenthesis will matter. So the open parenthesis shouldn't trigger any of these guys. The trick is not to ever resolve an open parenthesis. So what I want to do is look at the previous and say if that does not equal ppop parent open. Alright. And so that's saying, you know, if I have 3, I guess, times 4 plus 5, this plus doesn't tell this parenthesis to resolve. Only a closed parenthesis can do that. So we put an exception there for that. Okay, and then if the thing we get is, if this value, if value equals to get a parent and close, you do different stuff. Set those to 0 because that way when it comes through here, it'll just have an operand count of 0, and then the switch will not find anything for the open parenthesis, and it'll push on the stack, and that's all you want it to do, or that's all I want it to do. Okay, so next there's operand count less than the close parenthesis, and with that, what I do is I just loop back until I do that. I just loop back until I find the close parentheses. So really, that's just a matter of ops op count minus 1 dot type does not equal open parent. There we go. So while it's not an open parenthesis, and then basically I want to do all of this again, I think. Right? I mean, this is all the code that resolves an operator. Yeah, so I want to pull that out, which means pulling out a couple other things too. These need to be up, 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 right here. This is what code transforms will do for you automatically someday with 4coder. And it'll not bug me by messing the white space up. Okay, and then I want to make a function that will do exactly what all of this does. And it's going to be replaced by some other function call, whose parameters I'll figure out in a second. Oh shoot. Alright, so I messed up one thing, which is going to make this a small pain. These up here, with the counts and the maxes, these should be structs. So I need like an op stack. And I need a leaf stack. Which means this is going out, and all of this code is becoming invalid. So now it has to be wrapped in a struct. Stack. Ops dot op count equals 0. Ops dot op. Oops, ops dot count is what it's called now. Ops dot map equals array count. Ops dot ops. Leaves on the leaf stack. Leaves dot count. Leaves dot leaves.max, leaves.leaves. Okay. And that means I can pass the stacks like so. Okay. No, don't feel like doing this today. No, we're gonna do this differently. We're gonna, who knows, this might actually even be more efficient anyway. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we're going to redefine all the local variables the way they were originally declared so that it just works the way it was written. I'll leave it for now. It's probably not even that important. Ops count, max, op max, and then leaves, ops with leaves, op with leaf, whoops, left with leaf, there we go. Alright, so then at the bottom I just take the same shenanigans. Whoops, this needs to be take these shenanigans here and I reverse them at the bottom. Hobner Clambray asks, I wonder if Mr. Fourth Dimension likes regular American food or more exotic stuff. He then replies, no need to answer. If you use my name Alan, I won't see it. And if you put my handle, I'll definitely see it. So, there's a tip. Alright, to reverse this, I just want to take that equals that. That equals that. This is another co-transform, by the way. Although this co-transform becomes basically unnecessary when I think about it. The idea here is that you pass in pointers, but you localize them and then reassign to them at the end. But that becomes basically obsolete with some of my other stuff because you never even get yourself into a spot where you need. The reason I get at least for me, I get into this spot mostly because I wasn't able to take this step by step. Although maybe it's faster to localize, in cases like this anyway, and then you still want that code transform for speed. Because now I'm not referring to all of these things through a pointer everywhere. And now I'm fixing white space because that, that'll bug me if I don't. Alright, so resolve operators, now it's a function, and that goes as far as putting the result on the stack. Yeah. And so I'm going to take this out entirely. I'm going to come down here and we're going to say when we're in this spot, resolve the operator. That's at the top of that just resolves whatever's at the top of the stack. And then I just pass in ops and leaves. Same thing here. Cool. Okay, so that should be everything I need for close parentheses. And the last thing I need to do is, once I'm done with the for loop, I've read in all of the tokens. I want to do one more loop that looks kind of like those other loops. Again, to resolve any unresolved operators. Alright. So that actually means it's time to see how badly this doesn't build. Okay, pretty bad. Pretty bad. Whoa, so bad in fact that it went past the... Okay, great. 1066, let's start there. I think there's some sort of casting problem with... Okay, what does this say? Explicit cast, static... Conversion to enumeration type. Oh, what am I doing? That should be ints. Ints. Okay, that's a little nicer. Let's take a look at these. 512. It says undeclared. Oh, yeah. Okay, so these guys here, as I said, need to become sort of just globally available, I guess. So I'm gonna pop back up to 512. Drop that in right there. And those are global vars. Alright, let's see what I got this time. 117, initializing cannot convert from loose token to loose token stack. Interesting, let's take a look. Yep, just declared that wrong. What's next? Yep, so most of those are a problem with the declaration. 1121, I misspelled flags. PPOP bit and, okay, so let me go to the top. And correct, I did not underscore these. Let me just change it to that. Oh, I have it that way somewhere too. Where do I have it that way? Okay, let's fix those. .1076. Oh, more of that. Why did I write it that way so many times? well, because I didn't fix it in the enum and I copied everything out of the enum, so. /life asks it what global var and internal are. They are both defined as static. It's a convention I picked up from Handmade Hero, where, you know, Casey uses several different words to mean are replacements for the word static, just so that they don't all have the same word for wildly different meanings. That way, if you want to find all your global variables, for example, it's not so bad. Okay, so it's saying right here, case value 76 already used. I already used bit and? Oh, I did. I used bit and up there. Okay, so I have 2 for bit and then all of these aren't supposed to have the word bit in them. C1185. That is not the naming convention for the tokens, I'm guessing, so let me take a look at what that is. Greater, yeah, so I went with greater or equal, less or equal, and that one is not equal. $12.15. Of course there's a problem with that. It's crazy. Alright, what does it say? Data is not a member of parse file data. Oh, I got it. Got it. Parse file data contains a file and a stream of tokens, or an array of tokens, so I need to do that. Op count, undeclared identifier, line 1235. ops.ops, ops.count. ops.ops, ops.count. See, what I could do to speed this up, one idea I've always had is when you have a stack, you could always keep a pointer to the top, even though you can get to it by indexing to the top. Keep a pointer to the top too, and just increment and decrement that whenever you increment and decrement the count, so you can skip the -1 and then adding that and blah blah blah. Save yourself a few cycles whenever you're indexing the stack, or the top of the stack anyway. Da, da, 1242. Oh, there it is. Are there any others? Well, there's one down here, right? Ops.count. Okay. 1248. Ops.count. Ops.max. Ops.ops. Ops count. One, 2, 4, 5, 4. Leaves.leaves. Leaves.count. Leaves.max. Leaves.count. Illegal break. I don't think I've seen this before. Did I close too many brackets? I mean, that's clearly inside of a switch, right? Wow, so everything is off? That's weird. Did not see something like this before. Or have not seen something like this before. So at some point I lost track of where my brackets were supposed to be and I lined it up wrong. Let's see if that's better. Oh, jeez. Okay, just didn't save it. Perfect. 1042. Potentially uninitialized local variable? Yep. Okay. So you're worried about the potential uninitialization of end. Allow me to put your worries to bed. There we go. We can actually debug now. So what have I been at this for an hour and a half? Hour and 20 minutes. Alright. I want my breakpoints gone except for the main one. Just the main one. They're not lined up anymore. Yeah, that makes me curious. I just want to see real quick what the line count is now. Alright. And that's after deleting that whole section out of the parser. Right, every day I seem to delete a bunch of code that I've been keeping around that was dead, and then sort of just match it again with new lines. Yeah, I see an important comment in the chat, so I'm gonna mention it. Kilimian says hopefully supporting Jai 2 down the road. Definitely, that's I think that job will be easier because I believe John is planning to make the compiler open source, and it'll probably be a good one. The tricky part is when you parse for compilation, you don't have the same goals as when you parse for editing. Like I'm trying not to allocate a second buffer. Like sometimes you output one file basically and then use that as an intermediary to another file system, whereas this is trying not to have the creation of intermediate files of any kind. It's just trying to, and like it doesn't define a token as a separate string, right? The tokens refer back to the original file so that the file is the main focus at all times. It's a little bit different. Canucles asks, if you were to make a console text editor, how would you pull input and how would you process combos like Control S, win messages, or read control input? The answer is not totally sure. I know that there's a library I've seen that was pretty neat. C library for, which doesn't answer your question, but it's a pretty neat C library for doing things on console, like cross-platform console control for putting text in certain locations and coloring it, and I believe it handled input too. So I would probably start by looking at that because if I was going to make a console text editor, I'd like it to be cross-platform because you're already simplified so much of the problem by doing that if you don't get some sort of win out of it. Other than, of course, having one that runs on console. Having something that runs on console sometimes is just necessary, but I don't actually know. I'm not a Win expert by any means. Okay. I'm still watching if anyone has questions, but I'm going to give this a run now. We'll see what happens. It ran all the way to the end. What is... This can't be right. Something's messed up. That's totally wrong. Where did I... Oh, I put the breakpoint at the wrong spot. Okay. That's more like it. Oops. Okay, 605 needs an assert. Canoocles, I can't remember what it was called now. It was actually... I'll ask a friend of mine because he will know. No, you can, I mean, I actually don't know if you can do that in Windows, but I would imagine you can. I remember it having keyboard input, and I don't see why it wouldn't detect, I don't see why it wouldn't detect, modifier keys and stuff, like Control S. And yeah, terminals and other operating systems do it, so it seems to me like you should be able to find a way to do it. I'll try to find that library for you, too. Okay, so what I need, I need to go to line, what was it, like 505, 605, put an assert in, that leaf count remains less than, oh, I don't even need to write the max back out, do I? The max isn't changing right now. Leaf max. Okay. It looked to me like it was just going wildly beyond. It was going wildly beyond its maximum value, so take a look at that now. Yeah. Leaf count definitely got too high. So I'm going to put a breakpoint there, and we're going to watch each operator get resolved. So the first operator is the first one is let's take a look. I want to see ops underscore has one op. It's an open parenthesis. Right, okay. And is that the one it's trying to resolve? That shouldn't be the one it's trying to resolve. Should it? Okay, if it sees an open parenthesis and asks to resolve it, it should just ignore that and do nothing. So let's see if anything actually happens. Let me look at the leaves. It's got two zeros. Okay. I'm just curious what this is actually parsing even. I might switch to a simpler test case where I know exactly what it's doing right away for debugging it first. Okay, so the first if it should find is this one, but there's no operators in there, so it's this one. Other thing should have become a 3, and this is a 0, and now it's resolving that. Yeah, something's up, something's funky. Let's make a easy debug 1. Alright, so we're going to try using the easy debug test case instead so that I can follow what's happening. Oops, gotta rebuild. Okay, so what are the leaves it sees? It sees 51 and 48. What? No, that's totally wrong. Alright, we're gonna break sooner and see what's going on. We're gonna see what's going on. 0. Yeah, those get initialized, so that shouldn't be the problem. Okay. Alright, this is going to define all of those, which is fine. Okay, token count. How many tokens do I have? Let me take a look at this local tokens and see if it's reasonable. Use tokens 5. Are these good looking tokens? Parenthesis open, integer constant, equal, integer constant, parenthesis close. That's what should be there. Perfect. So, one step at a time now. What's the first token? Parenthesis open. Parse type, don't know yet. Value, don't know yet. Is it an operator? The answer is yes. Parse type, operator. Switch, parenthesis open. Perfect. Okay. If what we found is an operator, it is. Value does not equal 0, it does not. If it's a parenthesis close, it is not. Looks to see if it needs to do anything, it doesn't. Count is less than max, and finally it pushes something onto there. So the first thing it did was push an op, parenthesis open, which was worth 22. Okay. Next token. We get integer constant, good. It's not an operator, it's not an identifier, it's an integer constant, good. Size, okay, so it's looking at the 3, size 1. The value came out as 51. Oh, duh, okay, I messed that up. String. Where is string 2i32? It's right here. I have to subtract this out at each step because the ASCII values don't line up with the numerical values, obviously. Okay, now what do I see? I see leaves 3 and 0, and the ops, parenthesis open, equal, equal. And so now it's going to try to resolve the equal, equal. Yep, operand count 2, perfect. Grabs 2 of these. So let me see what it gets for operands. Operands 2. Oh, got them in the reverse order because they were right. So the first thing you see in the leaf stack is actually the right-hand operator. Okay, let me change that real quick. 520. There we go. So that should load the arguments up in the correct order. Oops. Operand count is 2, and then the operands become 0, 3. Okay, that's what I wanted to see. Type equal, equal. Result equals should be 0. Good. Maybe I want to parenthesis that, actually. But, anyway, those are not equal. Good. Leaf count is less than leaf max. It is. We push a new leaf on. It's a 0. And then you export the new op count and op mat leaf count. Really, leaf count's the only thing that can change in that whole function. Because then it's out here. Oh, look at this. It's doing the same operator over and over again. So actually, resolve operator should decrease the operand count by 1. Okay. Put the result onto the leaf stack. Perfect. Op count is 1, count is 1. So the only operator left is the open parenthesis, and the only leaf left is the result of the equals equals operator. And then it comes through. That was the end because the close parenthesis caused that to resolve. Op count is still okay. So when you finish closing the parenthesis, you need to take one more off. Okay, close. I'm looking for parent close. Here it is. So this says resolve everybody up until you find an open parenthesis, and then I want to take off the open parenthesis. And I want to assert, well, tentative assert, because really that'll just be a syntax error later. that ops count is greater than 0 at this point, because you don't want to have a closed parenthesis that didn't match an open parenthesis. Alright. I think we're almost there. So it comes in. Got to the very end. Now I just gotta check the output. It says success. Alright, let's give it a real test. Well, let's beef up the easy test, I mean to say, and then we'll give it the real test. Easy debug. Okay, so 3 equals 0. That's weak sauce. Climian, yeah, that's what I would. Climian asks what my tentative assert is about, and right now it's just defined to be an assert. I initially started doing it because there was a point where I had put in an assert that was kind of like the ones you see here, where I just did an assert on some error. Like I was doing, I think it was when I was doing lexing. It was like, oh, if this happens, it's an error, so assert. And the truth is, when you're editing code, you can easily open code that has errors in it, and you don't want asserts. So what I do is I use I introduce tentative assert just to say, hey, I made this easy on myself earlier by saying I could just assert. I told myself I could just assert here, but really I should handle this directly. I shouldn't assert. This should be a case I can handle. It's just, going to be easier for me to handle it later. So I put tentative assert so that I know when I see the code later that assert was, at the time, I knew it should come out. So, because otherwise if I see an assert, I get confused and I just have to ask myself, what's this assert for? So the tentative assert, it just communicates to me later when I see the assert that I didn't think that was going to be there forever, that I had an idea that I should actually handle that case, but I just wasn't testing that at the time. So it shouldn't. So I wanted to make sure it wasn't coming up at the time I wrote it, but in the end it should be handled. Now, ideally, what I would like is the exact thing you're talking about, an assert type that will break if it happens, but isn't necessarily going to break the flow of the program. Like I can keep stepping past that. It's just if this happens, break. Would be awesome. I just haven't gotten around to figuring out how to communicate with the debugger for that. I'm sure it's a simple function call or something. But then I would call that a debug assert if I did figure that out. Kicks in 1987. Are you asking me? Because I mean I don't know. I bet there are people who would say unit testing shouldn't involve asserts, but I don't know. I just do whatever it makes it easiest on me to test. And so in this case, what I have is kind of like a unit test because I built up the unit on its own independently, and I've got a set of tests that I run it through. But the way I tell if that test passes or fails isn't automatic. I don't have an automatic unit testing thing where I have the expected output or something and then I just run it and see if it's working. The way I tell if it fails is either it asserts or I inspect the output and it doesn't make sense. Now, in the future, I might want a smarter system for unit testing, right? Because I might have a lot of different parts, the parser, the lexer, the editor stuff, and at that point, I probably do want a proper unit tester, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm not trying to unit test right now. And even then, I probably would have asserts in my unit test because I like having asserts in my code. Jan Jan Marius 97, something like that. Marius 97, maybe. I'm programming an editor called 4coder. You can check it out at 4coder.net, which I'll link to right now. It's an editor for code writers, and I'm writing a C++ parser that reads your code if you're writing in those languages, and will give you semantic editing tools, basically, so that you can do more powerful things than what normal editors can provide. Alright, so anyway, we're going to see if this is being parsed properly. So this is a 5, that's a 3, that should become an 8. And that gets multiplied by that, and it should become an 88. This is 90 minus 2, it should become an 88. So this 88 not equal to 88 should fail, and I should see this, if everything works. Let's give it a run. Okay, so we actually hit an assert, which is good. It means we found a bug. Alright, so what I want to do is, it broke before it got to anything interesting. So what exactly happened? It says value equals 0. Parse type. I found an operator. Okay, so we need to run that again and walk through the part where it figures out what type of operator we have, because it didn't like whatever type of operator it thought we had. I'm going to take a quick peek at the local tokens. Parenthesis open, constant, plus constant, which is good. That means it's expanded the x into a constant. Close, star constant, not equal, constant, minus, constant, parenthesis close. That looks correct. Okay. So the tokens and the expander have worked. Parenthesis open. That is an operator. Parenthesis open, value is not 0 this time. Okay, next time through the loop, what happens? Tokens, parenthesis open again. It's identified as an operator, and we get value 22 again. Alright, all good. So now the ops should have 2 open parents sitting there. Perfect. Alright, then we get the constant. That should not be an operator. It's an integer constant, good. The value comes out as 3, perfect. And then, let's see, plus. Let's see, type is plus. Oh, we don't have one for plus in there? What's the deal? Okay. So I got the token name wrong there. So my tokens are a little complicated, unfortunately. Because there's a, that's right. So there's a distinction between a token app that comes out of the lexer, which, a plus is an example of something where it doesn't know for sure whether or not a plus means addition or unary positive, which is one of the more silly operators. But there is a unary positive operator. Same thing with minus and negative. So I need to pop over to the parser and see what the names are that I'm actually supposed to use. So star for that, plus, minus. Oh, I probably need unary negative here. Type handle unary negative and positive. Okay, that's annoying. But oh well. Did I call that trinary? Ternary. Okay. Let's see, what else is there? So I was down there where I have minus. What else? What else? Bit not. Needs to be replaced with tilde. Okay, so div and mod come right out of the lexer. L shift, R shift, less, greater, those come right out of the lexer. I have comments here that tell me which things, like this comment here tells me that bit and comes out of the lexer from ampersand. Or I could get bit and directly, so I actually want both. I can get bit and directly because of the trigraph stuff. Ampersand. Alright, who else has stuff? That is only from the parser. Bit not. Okay, so there is a chance of getting bit not directly. Okay, that looks better.